All right, we are back in getting ready for another football game. Before we dive into this Nebraska game and really preview it, give our predictions, which I've gone back and forth this week,
Right.
and now I feel like I have a good idea with that. So we'll get into that tomorrow. But
Yeah.
today, just any takeaways since the last time we talked after the North Dakota State game? I think one personnel note that's important is that Cameron Silman Craig looks like he'll be back in the mix for them, which is important, especially going against a 19-year-old quarterback. You want as much experience in that secondary to try to toy with him as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing is you worry about a guy like that. Well, anybody, but especially a starter like that getting injured, like we saw him go down early in that game, and so glad to see that he might be back because they need him, but it's big for him as well. And so he was an impactful player in this Nebraska game last year. Had the interception, and for those that forget, he didn't start that first game. Miles Slusher gets hurt. He gets to start against Nebraska, and and really balled out and had a great game. So it's great to see him back. But this week. We got to hear from Coach Prime, we got to hear from Justin Mayers and Jimmy Horn Jr. And they talked about the rivalry. And Jimmy Horn today was talking about how I think we understand a little bit more after going through it last year. Some of those guys were here, and so Buff fans got to like to hear that because they want this team to understand the rivalry a little bit.
Yeah, we got to see the governor really take his role seriously this week by banning red around here.
By the way, how funny is it that the people in Nebraska thought that Jared Polis actually told the team to not wear red? That's kind of funny.
It was pretty funny. I love this game because there's always some weird media stuff going back and forth, and then you get to the game and it's such high tension.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss not having Nebraska on Colorado's future schedule going forward.
Yeah, well, I know you and I missed it for several years when they weren't on the schedule initially in the Pac-12, and it's been nice having them. I mean, this is 4 times in 6-7 years that they've been on the schedule, so it's been nice. It's been almost annual. And it's been a fun thing. I'll miss that. And hopefully it's back on the schedule soon. But it's a fun game. To me. You and I think, are different than a lot of fans. That we like the CSU game on there as well, but I like having these rivalry games, and it's fun when they're on the schedule.
It's just because of the 13 years Colorado spent in the Pac-12, and they just never really developed that rivalry with other teams, and so there just was never that animosity. And part of it was that Colorado wasn't as competitive. Had they been a little bit more competitive, maybe that Utah turns into some semblance of a rivalry, but it simply never did. And so it's fun. And we'll get into the CSU game next week. And this is but not a CSU hoodie, by the way. Herman on the SID staff was giving me flack for that. I said it's not CSU week yet. But
Colorado Rockies alternative.
What Coach Prime said at his press conference about talking about them banning red, he said that's what college football is about, and I agree.
Yeah, I agree. That's the fun stuff, and I'm sure if you walked around, you could see somebody wearing a little bit of red here and there. But you love the banning of the red, and just that's what Bill McCartney did years ago, and it's kind of one of those rallying things to get the team and get the fan base. The fan base doesn't like to wear red. I remember Darian Hagan has to wear red now because he's at San Diego State. But I remember talking to him one time. He goes, "I don't even own anything red. Like it's crazy. I've just been conditioned to that." He does now, unfortunately. But that's a fun part of it, and I think the rivalry is great. The atmosphere, I know you've been to Lincoln a few times. We've seen these games here. Both places, the atmosphere is electric, and that makes it fun.
It was back in 2010. Brian Cabral was the interim head coach here. A former colleague of ours showed up, and he's not on the beat anymore, so no one needs to go on attack mode. He showed up with the brightest red sweater for the press conference on Nebraska Week. I thought Brian Cabral wanted to jump over that table and choke him out. He held it together, but there was a lot of anger in his eyes. It has a history here, and I think with the fact that it's not on the schedule going forward, there's almost more pressure on this game because if you're Colorado, you'd have a 4-game winning streak in this series going into the foreseeable future.
Right. I think Brian Cabral's face was as red as that sweater through all that, but I mean. I believe Colorado's never beaten them 4 times in a row throughout the history, and so I know it hasn't in recent years and like decades. So it'd be awesome for the Buffs to get 4 in a row and to have that. Maybe they never schedule them again. It's you win the last 4 games ever against this team, but that'd be a big deal, and they can definitely do it. I think and we'll get more into that tomorrow. But this is a fun game and one that the Buffs have owned them, since they left the conferences, since they left the Big 12 14 years ago, and so that's been fun for Buff fans, of course.
Nebraska has a relatively new AD. Rick George did tell me he's going to have a conversation when he goes out there.
Yeah.
Part of the problem, though, is you're scheduled out for almost a decade at this point. Now, things can change in the landscape of college football, and maybe you need to fill in some openings that you don't foresee right now. But I think there is a hope that they will play again. It just is going to probably come after a little bit of a break here.
Yeah, and Colorado has some openings now because of their shift to the Big 12, because they had some Big 12 matchups set, but it's whether Nebraska has those openings as well. So I hope that there are, because this is a game that you want on the schedule almost every year.
All right, well, tomorrow we'll be back and we'll break down this matchup with Colorado heading out to Lincoln, Nebraska.